It started when my 3-year-old daughter Emma came home from her weekend at my mother-in-law's house with a black eye. She fell down the stairs, Linda explained with that fake concerned voice she used whenever she got caught. These things happen when children aren't properly raised. The accusation was clear: I was a neglectful mother. My husband Jake immediately sided with his mother, like always. Emma's clumsy, you know that. But Emma wasn't clumsy, and the bruise on her eye looked exactly like fingerprints. That night, I held Emma while she sobbed into my shoulder. "Grandma said bad words when I spilled juice," she whispered. Then she grabbed my face really hard. My blood ran cold. The next morning, Linda called Jake. "I'm concerned about Emma's safety," she said, loud enough for me to hear through the phone. "Sarah seems overwhelmed. Maybe Emma should stay with us more often." Linda had been building a case against me for months, pointing out every scraped knee, every time Emma's hair wasn't perfectly brushed, every instance where I seemed stressed or distracted. What she didn't know was that I'd started documenting everything too. When Jake suggested Emma spend the entire summer with his parents, I knew Linda's plan was working. And it was then I realized my marriage was over. "It would be good for her," he said. "And you could use the break." That's when I realized I had to protect my daughter. Because he wouldn't. So I made a decision that would change everything. The next Friday, I installed a hidden camera in Emma's favorite stuffed animal, a pink bear she took everywhere. The camera was tiny, undetectable, and would record everything for 12 hours. I dropped Emma off with my usual smile. "Have fun with Grandma, sweetheart." Linda barely looked at me. "We'll call if there are any problems," she said coldly. 12 hours later, I picked up Emma and her bear. She was quieter than usual, but Linda seemed pleased with herself. "Emma was much better behaved today," she announced. "She's learning proper discipline." That night, after Emma was asleep, I connected the camera to my laptop. What I saw made me physically sick. At first, it was normal, Linda giving Emma lunch, playing with toys. But as soon as Emma spilled apple juice on her dress, Linda's demeanor changed completely. "You stupid little brat," she hissed, grabbing Emma's arm so hard my daughter yelped. "Just like your mother, clumsy and worthless." I watched in horror as Linda dragged Emma to the guest room and forced her to stand in the corner, for 2 hours. When Emma cried, Linda screamed at her to shut up. "Nobody cares about your tears," Linda said. "Your mother doesn't want you. That's why you're here." But the worst part came when Emma asked for water. Linda grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. "What did I tell you about asking for things? You get what I give you." Then she locked Emma in the guest bedroom for 3 hours. I could hear my daughter sobbing through the door, begging to come out. "Please, Grandma, I'll be good," Emma's tiny voice pleaded. "You should have thought of that before being such a brat," Linda replied through the door. When Emma wet herself from fear, Linda made her sit in the soiled clothes as punishment. "This is what happens to bad girls," she said. "Now you know how disgusting you are." I had to pause the video multiple times to vomit. This woman had been alone with my daughter dozens of times over the past year. The footage was devastating. But I knew I needed more than one incident to build a case that would protect Emma permanently. The next weekend, I sent another recording device, this time sewn into Emma's headband. The results were even worse. Linda had invited her neighbor friend, Margaret, over. They spent the afternoon critiquing everything about Emma, treating her like a science experiment. "Look at her posture," Margaret said, sipping tea while Emma stood trembling in the center of the room. "No discipline at home, obviously. Sarah doesn't know how to raise a child." Linda agreed, circling Emma like a predator. "That's why Emma needs to live here permanently." They made Emma stand perfectly still in the center of the living room while they pointed out her flaws in excruciating detail. "Feet together. Back straight. Chin up," Linda commanded. "This is how proper young ladies stand." When Emma's arms got tired and she dropped them slightly, Linda slapped her hands with a wooden ruler she kept specifically for these sessions. "We'll do this until you get it right," she said with cold satisfaction, "Your mother never taught you proper behavior, but I will." An hour and 15 minutes. Every mistake earned a sharp slap or harsh criticism. I watched my daughter's spirit break a little more with each cruel comment. "Look at those fingernails," Margaret observed, leaning in close to Emma's trembling hands. "Filthy. Sarah clearly doesn't teach basic hygiene." Emma had been gardening with me the day before, helping me plant flowers for Mother's Day. Her nails had traces of soil I'd missed during her bath. "I've been documenting everything," Linda said proudly, pulling out a thick folder. Sarah's drinking. Her mood swings. Emma's constant injuries. The courts will see what kind of mother she really is. Margaret nodded approvingly. "You're doing the right thing. That child deserves a stable home with proper guidance." "Oh, she won't be with Sarah much longer," Linda replied smugly. "I'm building an airtight case. Soon Emma will be where she belongs, with people who know how to keep little girls in line properly." They discussed my supposed failings while forcing Emma to stand motionless like a statue. When she shifted her weight or scratched an itch, Linda made her start the posture exercise over from the beginning. "Your mother is weak," Linda told Emma directly, staring into her frightened eyes. "That's why you have behavioral problems. But I'll fix you. I'll make you into a proper little lady." Emma started crying silently, tears streaming down her face. "Stop that crying this instant," Linda snapped. "Proper ladies don't cry over discipline. This is for your own good." That's when I realized the full scope of Linda's plan. She wasn't just trying to get more time with Emma, she was systematically breaking down my daughter's self-worth while building a custody case to steal her permanently. I found her documentation the following week when Jake asked me to pick up some papers from his parents' house for our taxes. Linda wasn't home. I used the emergency key Jake gave me, telling me she keeps all her important files in a filing cabinet in her office. Tax stuff should be in the family folder. There, in a manila folder labeled Emma's welfare, was everything. Photos of Emma's scraped knees with timestamps and detailed descriptions. A leather-bound journal documenting every time I seemed tired or distracted. Screenshots of my social media posts that could be taken out of context. Even photographs of our house taken from outside, with notes about unsafe conditions. She'd even written detailed reports in the style of professional assessments, complete with letterhead she'd created. Date, March 15, 7:30 p.m. Sarah appeared intoxicated at Emma's birthday party, slurring words and stumbling. Emma seemed embarrassed by her mother's behavior and sought comfort from other adults. Witnessed by multiple guests. I'd had one glass of wine and twisted my ankle in heels while carrying Emma's birthday cake. Date, March 22, 8:15 a.m. Emma's clothes were wrinkled and mismatched, indicating neglect. Child appeared unkempt and tired. Hair unbrushed. Face unwashed. Sarah seemed irritated when I pointed out Emma's appearance. Emma had dressed herself that morning while I was dealing with a work crisis. I thought her creative outfit choices were adorable. Date, April 3, 2:45 p.m. Sarah seems depressed and uninterested in parenting duties. Emma seeks attention from other adults, suggesting emotional neglect at home. Child appears hungry and asks repeatedly for snacks. I'd been grieving my father's death, and Emma was naturally social and always hungry for snacks. Date, April 10, 4:10 p.m. Found Emma playing unsupervised near the pool area during family gathering. Sarah was nowhere to be found. Child could have drowned. When confronted, Sarah became defensive and angry. I'd been in the bathroom for 3 minutes. The pool had a locked safety gate. The entries went on for pages, each one twisting normal parenting moments into evidence of my unfitness. Linda had been watching and documenting our lives for months, taking photos through our windows, timing my every move, and interpreting everything through the lens of neglect. At the bottom of the file was a business card for a family lawyer specializing in grandparents' rights, along with detailed notes about my supposed mental health issues and drinking problems. She'd even gone through our medicine cabinet and found my prescription for anxiety medication after my father's death, documenting it as further evidence of my instability. But there was more. I found a folder labeled character references, filled with statements from people in our community. Linda had apparently been conducting a whisper campaign about my parenting for months, carefully planting seeds of doubt about my fitness as a mother. Mrs. Henderson from the church: Sarah seems distracted during services. Emma often seeks attention from other adults. The child appears to be hungry for affection, which suggests emotional neglect at home. The pediatrician's nurse, Sarah, appears overly anxious during appointments. Asks excessive questions that suggest she's out of her depth with normal childhood development. Emma seems more comfortable with medical staff than with her mother. Even our mailman had been recruited. I've noticed that little girl plays outside alone frequently. Mother works from home but doesn't seem to supervise closely. Child has approached me several times seeking adult attention. Every normal aspect of our life had been weaponized against me. Linda had twisted Emma's friendliness into evidence of neglect. My work-from-home schedule into negligence. My natural parental concern into an anxiety disorder. The most damning file was labeled professional evaluation. Linda had somehow convinced Emma's preschool teacher to document concerning behaviors. Though I suspected the teacher had no idea how her observations would be used. Emma exhibits anxiety around loud noises and unexpected touch, the teacher had written. She apologizes excessively for normal childhood mistakes and seems fearful of authority figures. These behaviors have become more pronounced over the past few months. These were textbook symptoms of abuse. But Linda was presenting them as evidence I was the abuser, when in reality, they were signs of her own treatment of Emma. That night, I copied everything. And I started planning my counterattack. I realized I was dealing with someone far more dangerous and calculating than I'd ever imagined. I began researching Linda's past, something I'd never bothered to do before marrying Jake. What I found was illuminating and terrifying. But the most damning, a sealed juvenile record for Jake's older sister, Rachel. I had never known he had a sister. Linda claimed she was unstable. But when I dug deeper into public records, a pattern emerged. Every family Linda had worked for had experienced some kind of crisis shortly after she entered their lives. One family had gotten divorced and had gone through a bitter custody battle. Another had dealt with CPS investigations. A third saw their teenage daughter run away from home. That evening, I asked Jake about his sister. His face went pale. Rachel doesn't talk to the family anymore, he said quietly. Mom says she's unstable. She became an addict, Jake said quietly. Ran away when I was 8. I barely remember her after that. What happened to her? I asked. She got clean eventually, but then had some kind of breakdown in rehab. Blamed our mom for everything that went wrong in her life. What kind of breakdown? I pressed. Jake hesitated, eyes flicking away. I don't know the details. She started saying crazy things. About her childhood. About mom being abusive. Said there were things she remembered that didn't make sense. The therapist, one mom hired, said it was just false memories. That she was projecting. They said she was unstable, he added. That she was making it all up. But by now, I had learned, in Linda's world, truth was whatever protected her image, and anyone who challenged it was labeled unstable. It sounded disturbingly familiar. Linda's pattern was becoming horrifyingly clear. She created chaos, then positioned herself as the solution. When's the last time you talked to Rachel? I asked. Jake shrugged uncomfortably. Maybe 15 years? She sent a card when Emma was born, but Mom threw it away. She said Rachel's influence would be toxic for a new baby. That we had no idea how she might try to manipulate Emma, and you, into believing the lies she'd been pushing for years. And with that answer I decided to hire a private investigator to track down Rachel. She was living across the country under her married name, working as a high school teacher, with 2 well-adjusted children of her own. When I called her, there was a long silence. After I introduced myself, there was a long pause. So you finally figured out what Linda really is, Rachel said, her voice heavy with unsurprised resignation. I've been waiting for this call for 3 years. I'm sorry for bothering you, I began, but I need to know about your childhood. With Jake. With her. Rachel laughed bitterly. Which version? The one Linda tells everyone, or what actually happened behind closed doors? She agreed to meet me the following weekend. I flew to Boonville, California with copies of my video evidence and Linda's documentation in my carry-on, desperate to understand the full scope of what I was facing. Rachel lived in a modest but warm house, filled with her children's artwork and family photos. She was nothing like the unstable woman Linda had described for years. She broke my arm when I was Emma's age, Rachel said quietly, showing me medical records she'd kept in a safety deposit box for over 20 years. Told everyone I fell off my bike. The doctor was suspicious, the break was consistent with someone grabbing and twisting, but Linda was so convincing. She cried and talked about how clumsy I was. How difficult it was to keep me safe. The pattern was clear. Linda had abused both Jake and Rachel throughout their childhood, then convinced the world she was a perfect, long-suffering mother. When we struggled with the trauma, she used that as proof we were unstable, Rachel continued, her voice steady, though her hands were shaking slightly. The psychological abuse was worse than the physical. She had me convinced I was crazy, that my memories couldn't be trusted. She'd do horrible things to me, and the next day, act like nothing happened. When I tried to tell someone, our dad, a teacher, she'd produce evidence that I was lying. Fake diary entries. Photos that contradicted my story. Rachel showed me her own files, medical records spanning her childhood, therapy notes from college, even a recording she'd secretly made years ago, Linda berating her during a phone call. Listen to this, she said, pressing play. Linda's voice, venomous. You're a pathological liar, Rachel. Always have been. You just want to destroy me because you're jealous. You're sick. You need help. This was from when I was 22. I was trying to get help. Jake was too little, Rachel said softly. He doesn't remember everything, and what he does remember, she convinced him the drugs had made me mentally ill. That I was jealous of their relationship. That I was just making it all up. Her voice caught for a moment before she continued. In a soft, almost ashamed tone, she said, I got hooked because of the pain medication. She didn't finish the sentence. She looked down, swallowing hard. I was so young. I didn't even understand what addiction was. I just knew the pills made the pain stop, all of it. Not just the physical. Her voice steadier now. He was her golden child, as long as he never questioned her version of reality. When I met my husband, I had to learn what a normal relationship looked like. It took years just to trust my own memories and feelings. She watched my videos with growing horror. Recognition flooded her face. This is exactly what she did to me, she said, tears falling freely now. The isolation. The criticism. The way she makes the child feel responsible for the abuse. She's doing to Emma what she did to me. Will you help me? I asked. I've been waiting 20 years for someone to ask, Rachel said. She provided me with detailed documentation of Linda's abusive pattern, names of families she'd worked for, the crises that followed, even old contact information for victims willing to talk. Together, we built a comprehensive picture of a woman who systematically destroyed families while positioning herself as their savior. Armed with Rachel's testimony and my evidence, I returned home and confronted Jake. Your mother is abusing Emma, I said, placing the laptop in front of him. He watched in stunned silence as Linda screamed at our daughter, locked her in rooms, made her stand in wet clothes. I could see the cognitive dissonance crashing down. This isn't real, he whispered, pale. You edited this. Somehow, call your sister, I said, handing him Rachel's number. Jake rolled his eyes. That's what this is about? I told you, Rachel is sick. She's always been sick. And now you've let her toxicity seep into you. But then something shifted. His defiance faltered. His expression changed, his eyes widening with sudden fear. You didn't let Emma near her, did you? he asked, voice barely above a whisper. That night, we had the biggest fight of our marriage. I told him, plain and simple, that I didn't want Emma going over there anymore, and that she would never be left alone with his mother again. He snapped back that I was letting Rachel get into my head. That she'd always tried to tear families apart. I told him he was being blind. Willfully blind. And that his refusal to even consider the truth was putting our daughter in danger. We yelled. Accused. Cried. Finally, I said the words that made him go completely still. I'm taking Emma to my parents' house. They retired to Mexico last year, and I'll go stay with them if I have to. I will not let your mother near her again. He went quiet. For the first time in the whole argument, really quiet. After a long silence, he nodded, slowly. Then picked up the phone with shaking hands. He dialed his mother. Emma won't be staying with you anymore, he said simply. Linda's reaction was immediate and explosive. I've been protecting that child from your wife's neglect, Linda hissed. Sarah is mentally unstable. Just like your sister. Emma deserves a real mother, one that can give her proper guidance and discipline. I know. But Sarah is going to take Emma to Mexico with her parents. Just give me some time. If I keep her from talking to Rachel, this will blow over. Just give it 2 weeks. I stood in shock. How dare you keep my granddaughter from me, she screamed, loud enough for me to hear across the room. You're both unfit parents. I have documentation proving it. I'll take that child away from you if it's the last thing I do. And then she hung up. And then I yelled, how can you agree with her? I have evidence, Jake. Evidence. That will show everyone what kind of grandmother she really is. Jake rolled his eyes, looking very tired. Yes, the fake footage you showed me. Then he paused and looked at me. You know you're pretty good with the whole editing, but the topic is questionable, and with that. He went to bed. I found myself wore out as well. That night I slept with Emma. The next morning when we woke up, Jake had already left for the day. Me and Emma had a peaceful Sunday. We made waffles. Then we made a birthday card for my dad, Emma's idea. His birthday is next month. Then we went to McDonald's. For a Happy Meal lunch. We played there for 2 hours. Then we got frozen yogurt. And then we went home. I made a late supper and we watched Horton Hears a Who and then the Lorax. Jake did not come home that night or the next. 2 days later, I received the papers. Linda was filing for emergency custody. And still Jake never came home. She was claiming Emma was in immediate danger from neglect and abuse. Her petition was a masterpiece of manipulation, filled with lies and twisted truths that painted me as a dangerous, unstable mother. She claimed I was an alcoholic who drank during the day while caring for Emma. She alleged that Emma showed signs of severe physical and emotional abuse, unexplained injuries, behavioral problems, fear of her own parents. Attached were photos of Emma's normal childhood scrapes, knees scraped from learning to ride a bike. A bump from running into a table. A bruise from climbing playground equipment. Each photo came with a detailed description designed to make these innocent injuries sound like neglect. The petition also included professional opinions. Linda had somehow convinced several people in the community to sign statements about my supposed unfitness. Each worded just carefully enough to sound damning without being outright false. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, leaving me little time to prepare. I spent every waking moment working with my lawyer, David Thomas, a soft-spoken man with kind eyes and years of experience defending parents against false allegations. This is more common than you'd think, David said in our first meeting. Abusive grandparents often project their own behavior onto the parents they're trying to discredit. They build false cases over months or years, documenting normal parenting struggles as evidence of abuse. I gave him everything: the hidden camera videos, Rachel's testimony, Linda's employment history, and medical records showing abuse patterns across multiple families. Most importantly, I arranged for Emma to be interviewed by Dr. Mary Ainsworth, a child psychologist who specialized in abuse cases. And still no Jake. I didn't even try to call him. I was more than mad. I was disappointed. His not being there for his daughter said all I needed to know. The session was heartbreaking. Emma, normally chatty and bright, became quiet and withdrawn when asked about her grandmother. She drew pictures no 3-year-old should know how to draw, images full of fear and powerlessness, far beyond her years. Emma is exhibiting classic signs of emotional abuse, Dr. Ainsworth told me after the session. But she's also showing remarkable resilience. You've done a good job creating a safe environment for her to start healing. The day of the hearing was surreal. The courtroom was packed with Linda's supporters, churchgoers, neighbors, family friends, people who had no idea what she was really like behind closed doors. Part of me hoped that Jake would show up and sit beside me. But deep down I knew he wouldn't come. Linda arrived with her attorney, dressed in a conservative navy suit that made her look like the embodiment of a loving grandmother. She'd even brought tissues, keeping them prominently displayed on the table, ready for her performance. She testified tearfully about Emma's concerning behaviors, and my obvious neglect, painting herself as a reluctant whistleblower who had tried everything to help before being forced to take legal action. That child is crying out for help, she said, dabbing her eyes with practiced precision. She comes to my house anxious and fearful. When I try to comfort her, she flinches, as if she's been hit. I've tried to work with Sarah to offer support and guidance, but she becomes defensive and angry whenever I express concern. I watched the judge's face during Linda's performance, trying to read his expression. He seemed sympathetic to her story, nodding along with her testimony. My heart sank. She was so convincing. First, the pediatrician's nurse took the stand, and it didn't go the way Linda had hoped. Mrs. Morrison always accompanies Emma to her appointments, the nurse said. She makes sure her opinion is heard, loudly. She often talks over the doctor, making it hard for Sarah to get a word in. There was a quiet ripple in the courtroom. Linda stiffened, clearly unprepared for this version of events. The nurse continued, Sarah always comes prepared with questions, but she rarely gets to ask them. Mrs. Morrison tends to dominate the room. It's uncomfortable, honestly. Not supportive. Then Mrs. Margaret Henderson from church took the stand. Linda is devoted to that little girl. She's always talking about Emma's growth and expressing concern about the home environment. She's mentioned several times that she's worried about Emma's safety. Then our neighbor took the stand. Emma spends a lot of time outside, he said with a friendly shrug. She's the friendliest kid you'll ever meet, talks to everyone. So yeah, we all kind of look out for her. He chuckled. But her mom? She's always working. I don't know how she does it, always looking out the window, never even glances down at her phone or keyboard. I've seen her stop mid-call just to make sure Emma's safe. Then his tone shifted slightly. But that mother-in-law, he shook his head. She's always looking for trouble. Always trying to twist simple, everyday things into something they're not. Linda's expression didn't change, but her grip on the table tightened. Linda's lawyer desperately tried to paint a picture of a noble, concerned grandmother trying to save a neglected child from an overwhelmed, prideful parent. My client has reluctantly come forward, the lawyer said in closing, because she fears for Emma's safety. The evidence shows a clear pattern of neglect and possible abuse. Emma deserves a stable, loving home with adults who can provide proper care and guidance. Then it was our turn. David Thomas stood slowly and addressed the court with quiet confidence. Your Honor, he began, we're here today because the petitioner has systematically abused her granddaughter, while simultaneously building a false case against the child's loving parents. What you're about to see will shock you. But it represents the truth about Linda Morrison. He played the first video. The courtroom went completely silent as Linda's voice filled the room, harsh and cruel, in jarring contrast to her earlier, gentle testimony. You stupid little brat. Just like your mother. Clumsy and worthless. I watched Linda's face. For just a moment, her mask slipped. Pure rage flashed across her features before she composed herself again. Clip after clip played, Linda screaming. Grabbing Emma. Locking her in rooms. And then her and Margaret Henderson making cruel comments about her granddaughter's appearance and behavior. The contrast was undeniable. The sweet grandmother on the witness stand and the monstrous woman in the videos were the same person. The judge's expression darkened with each minute. His earlier sympathy evaporated. "Your Honor," Linda's lawyer stammered, "these videos are clearly edited, or taken out of context." "Are you claiming this is not your client's voice?" David asked. The lawyer had no answer. The footage was continuous, unedited, and damning. Then we played the audio of Linda confiding in Margaret, her cruel commentary, her strategic emotional abuse, her plans to fix Emma and take her back. The room was silent, except for the sound of Linda sobbing, not from remorse, but from frustrated rage at a child who wouldn't conform. Then Rachel took the stand. She testified about her own childhood with poise and composure. "My mother is very good at appearing concerned," she said, her eyes locked on Linda. "But behind closed doors, she's a predator. She destroyed my childhood, convinced everyone I was mentally ill when I tried to get help. And now she's doing the same thing to Emma." Linda's lawyer tried to discredit her. "Ma'am, isn't it true you've been estranged from your family for years due to drug problems and mental health issues?" Rachel smiled, calm but cutting. "I've been estranged from my abuser. And my addiction started with the pain medication given to me when my mother claimed I fell. Or slipped. But from all my many childhood injuries. There's a significant difference. And I have been drug-free for 15 years. Then came Dr. Ainsworth, the child psychologist. She presented Emma's drawings, bright, colorful ones of her parents and friends, and then the others, a large, angry face with sharp teeth. A little girl locked in a box. A woman with claws reaching for a crying child. "These images are not fiction," Dr. Ainsworth said. "They are representations of a child's reality, filtered through fear and trauma." She explained the behavioral signs: Emma flinching when touched. Constant apologizing. Severe anxiety around authority figures. "In your professional opinion," David asked, "who poses a threat to this child's well-being?" "Absolutely the grandmother," Dr. Ainsworth said without hesitation. "Emma shows no signs of abuse in her primary home. The trauma symptoms only appear in relation to visits with the petitioner." Linda's lawyer had no meaningful questions. Finally, David presented Linda's employment history, the mysterious firings, the complaints, the pattern. "Your Honor," he concluded, "this is not a custody case. This is a criminal matter. The petitioner has committed systematic child abuse while attempting to fraudulently steal a child through manipulation of the legal system." The judge called a brief recess. When he returned, his expression was stern. "This petition is not only denied in its entirety," he said, turning to Linda, "but I'm issuing an immediate restraining order. Mrs. Linda Morrison is prohibited from any contact with the minor child, directly or indirectly, for a period of no less than 10 years. He turned to the clerk. "Ensure law enforcement is notified. Copies are to be sent to the child's school and daycare." Then he looked back at Linda. "Your behavior, as documented in these recordings, constitutes clear evidence of systematic child abuse. I am referring this case to the district attorney for immediate criminal prosecution. I am also ordering a full investigation into your past employment as a caregiver. And I am recommending that your name be added to all relevant child abuse registries." Linda exploded from her seat. "This is ridiculous," she screamed. "I'm the only one who truly cares about that child. These people have poisoned her against me with their lies." "Ma'am," the judge said sharply. "Sit down or you will be held in contempt of court." Her lawyer tried to restrain her, but she ranted louder. "That child is in danger. Sarah is mentally unstable, just like my daughter. Emma needs discipline, not this permissive nonsense that's ruining her." "Bailiff," the judge said. The bailiff stepped forward. Linda finally sat, her face twisted in fury. The mask was gone. The woman she truly was now on full display for the courtroom to see. "I've been on this bench for 15 years, the judge said, voice grim, and I have rarely seen such clear evidence of child abuse disguised as concern. This was not a case of a loving grandmother expressing legitimate fears, this was a predator using the legal system to continue her abuse. He turned to the courtroom, addressing her stunned supporters. I want to be very clear about what happened here today. This was not justice being sought, but control. This child was not rescued, she was targeted. Linda sat in stunned silence, finally realizing that her perfect plan had not only failed, it had destroyed her. But I wasn't done. Outside the courthouse, I handed copies of the videos to the local news station and several national media outlets that covered stories about child abuse. Linda and Margaret's carefully crafted reputation in our small city evaporated overnight. The story ran on the evening news under the headline, "Respected Grandmothers Caught Abusing Toddler on Hidden Camera." They interviewed Dr. Ainsworth about the signs of child abuse, aired selected clips from the recordings, Emma's identity protected, and discussed how predators often present themselves as concerned caregivers. Within hours, the story exploded across social media. Larger news outlets picked it up. Linda's Bridge Club issued a statement distancing themselves from her. Margaret's family cut her off after seeing the video of her and Linda critiquing everything about Emma, treating her like a science experiment. And their church quietly asked them to step down from all ministries involving children. Neighbors who had praised her parenting skills for decades suddenly remembered things they'd ignored or dismissed, little red flags that made much more sense in hindsight. 3 other families came forward with stories of their own. Children returned home upset or injured after time with Linda. Excuses that hadn't quite made sense. Gut feelings that something was off, feelings they'd suppressed because of her sterling reputation. One mother, Jennifer Walsh, shared her experience during a local news segment. "My daughter, also named Emma, coincidentally, was 7 when Linda babysat for us. She came home one night and said Linda made her stand in the corner for hours, because she couldn't tie her shoes fast enough. When I asked Linda about it, she said Emma was exaggerating. That children often make up stories to avoid consequences. I believed her. Because everyone said she was wonderful with kids." Another family revealed that their son had refused to stay with Linda after she forced him to eat food he was allergic to, as punishment for being too picky. They'd switched babysitters, but never reported it. Because, like so many others, they doubted their own child's story. Now, everything was unraveling. The criminal case moved swiftly. Margaret, hoping it would all disappear, pled guilty to her charges of failure to protect, and/or failure to report, escaping the perjury charges as her testimony was of opinion. She was given 5 years probation with 6 months house arrest. But Linda, she didn't go so quietly. She was insistent, but, with video evidence, witness testimony, and her courtroom outburst, the district attorney had a strong case. Linda tried to fight the charges at first, claiming the videos were doctored, that she was the victim of a coordinated conspiracy. But expert analysis confirmed the recordings were authentic, her voice, her actions, her words, and Margaret's confession. She was faced with overwhelming proof, and she had no choice. Linda accepted a plea deal. She pled guilty to child endangerment, filing false reports, and perjury. She received 2 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, mandatory psychological counseling, and a permanent ban from working with children in any capacity. The judge also ordered her to pay for Emma's therapy and issued a lifetime restraining order, extending to any future children in our family. Your actions have traumatized an innocent child and violated the sacred trust between a grandparent and grandchild, the judge told her during sentencing. You used your position of authority and respect in the community to systematically abuse a vulnerable child while attempting to destroy her family through fraudulent legal proceedings. Linda stood silently. No more tears. No more performance. The mask was gone for good. Jake struggled deeply with the revelations, but he remained committed to defending his mother. I filed for divorce. Jake hadn't come home. I didn't know where to send the papers, so I mailed them to his mother's house. Turns out, he'd been staying there the whole time. I didn't ask for much. We were only renting the apartment, and I was planning to move to Boonville. I didn't want to deal with moving trucks or shipping costs. All I wanted were our personal belongings, and full custody of Emma. I'd been a stay-at-home mom from the beginning. Emma needed routine, safety, and emotional stability, not shared time with someone still unraveling his past. A few weeks later, Jake reached out through my lawyer. He was willing to give up his parental rights in exchange for not paying long-term alimony. I said yes. As part of the civil contract, he agreed to set aside $1,000 in an educational trust for Emma every month. He would also pay $800 a month in child support until I remarried, or Emma turned 18. The education fund would be managed by a law firm of my choosing, until Emma turned 30, at which point, any remaining balance would be transferred directly to her. Emma also began therapy, age-appropriate, trauma-informed care. She learned that adults should never hurt children. That telling the truth is safe. That love isn't something you have to earn by being perfect. Her progress was remarkable. Within a month, the night terrors stopped. She began to laugh again, spontaneous, joyful laughter, the kind that only comes from feeling safe. The constant apologizing faded, replaced by confidence. 6 months after the trial, Emma was thriving in her new preschool. She made friends immediately, smiled often, and showed no signs of the anxiety and hypervigilance that once defined her every movement. Her new teacher, Mrs. Rudnicki, pulled me aside after the first week. "Emma is such a confident, happy child," she said warmly. "She speaks up for herself, shows empathy, and regulates her emotions beautifully. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." If only she knew what we'd endured to get here. One night, as I was tucking Emma into bed in our new home, she looked up at me with her big brown eyes. "Mommy, why was Grandma Linda so mean to me?" I chose my words carefully. "Some people have sickness in their hearts," I said gently. "It makes them want to hurt others, especially those who are small and can't protect themselves. But that was never your fault. You are a wonderful little girl who deserves only kindness and love." She nodded solemnly, processing it the way only a 4-year-old could. "I'm glad she can't hurt me anymore." "She can't," I promised, stroking her hair. "And she never will again." 2 years later, Linda violated her restraining order by showing up at Emma's new school, somehow having tracked down our location. A vigilant teacher spotted her lurking near the playground and immediately called the police. She was arrested within minutes and charged with violating the protective order and attempted child abduction. This time, there was no plea deal. She spent 12 months in jail and was then transferred to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. When released, she moved to another state. We haven't heard from her since. My lawyer maintains a standing alert in case she ever attempts to contact us or locate our whereabouts. Emma is 8 now, confident, happy, thriving. She's active in school, has close friendships, and shows no lasting effects from Linda's abuse. She doesn't remember much about her grandmother anymore. And that's exactly how I wanted it. Her child psychologist assured us that this is normal and healthy. Young children, when removed from danger and given proper support, often don't retain detailed trauma memories. Sometimes people ask if I feel guilty for destroying Linda's reputation. I don't. Not even a little. She made her choices. She chose to abuse a defenseless child. She chose to weaponize the legal system against me. All I did was shine a light on the truth. The ripple effects reached far beyond our family. The state launched a full investigation into Linda's employment history. A disturbing pattern emerged, complaints buried beneath her reputation. New legislation was passed requiring enhanced background checks for private caregivers. Mandatory reporting training for childcare providers became law. Linda's case is now a textbook example in child psychology programs, used to train future social workers, teachers, and lawyers on how predators weaponize reputation and trust. And Emma? She grew up knowing she is safe. That her voice matters. That adults don't get to hurt her. She sets boundaries with confidence. She speaks up when something feels wrong. She knows, deep in her bones, that she is worthy of love and protection. Last month, She came home from school beaming. "A new friend's grandma came to our class today," she said brightly. "She brought cookies and read us stories. She didn't yell at anybody or make mean faces." I smiled. Emma is surrounded now by real examples of what love looks like. What family should feel like. She still has one set of loving grandparents, my parents, who moved closer to be near her. They shower her with appropriate affection, create joyful memories. Linda thought she could weaponize Emma to destroy me. She thought her lies would win. But in the end, I used her own cruelty as the weapon that exposed her. The truth was stronger than her manipulation. The truth always wins in the end. And that's how I saved my daughter.